I now realize that I probably should have done this before ever trying to rebuild my own engine. Almost exactly 6 weeks ago today, I uploaded the last video in my engine building series, which involved me tearing apart the heads of my engine so I could send a ton of parts off to the machine shop to be evaluated and fixed. Now, I've been learning lessons the hard way throughout the entire build of my engine, whether it be broken bolts, improperly bought parts, buying the wrong parts, or even just a general lack of knowledge of what I'm doing. There have been a lot of lessons that I've learned in this project so far. And taking these parts to the machine shop has given me a reality check that was just unbelievable. So today I want to sit down and tell you everything that I got done at the machine shop, what they fixed, what they found, and how close I was to destroying the engine that I've put so much work into. Now, as a quick recap for anybody who hasn't followed the series along the way, I'm building a Chevy 350 to put in the 75 Camaro that's sitting behind me. We're going for almost 400 horsepower. We've put thousands of dollars into this project, and we've had some crazy experiences all along the way. But I don't want to waste too much time recapping every single thing that's happened, so if you're curious, go back through and watch the series up until this point. But the most important thing that went wrong was the fact that I got the engine completely put together and it wouldn't even crank over. The rotating assembly wouldn't spin, it was locked up, nothing would move. So we tore the engine apart, got in touch with some experts who knew what they were doing and said, hey, we might be able to help you fix it. And everybody in my comments the whole way along was saying,
dude, you need to bring this to an engine shop, you're gonna mess something up.
And you know what? You guys were right. I was really close to having catastrophic damage to this engine if I hadn't taken it to the machine shop. So right here I have the invoice from the machine shop, and I'm gonna tell you every single thing that they did, how much it cost me to get done, and at the end of it, I'm gonna let you guys decide, was it worth the money or was I ripped off? So item number one that they did was a full 3-angle valve job. We had the new manly valves and we had new heads. We needed the valves to properly seal against the new heads, so we had them do a 3-angle valve job. That'll make sure there's good compression, there's good airflow, everything should be working really well there. They also checked the guide clearance and the head gasket surface to make sure those were clear, and those all checked out A+. So that right there cost me $175 for the valve job and the checks. The next thing they did was measure and properly shim all of the springs to the valves. So we had the proper valve height, the proper spring compression, no binding on the springs when the cam was moving. So they compared it to the cam, they set everything up for me, and that was $85. And then in addition to assembling the heads for me, they also put new steel cups on the bottoms of the springs, so they're compressing properly and they're not digging into the heads when the valve train is moving. And those new cups cost me $40. So all in all, the work on the heads cost me $300 to get those ready to put back on the engine. Then the next thing on the list was we wanted to get the rotating assembly balanced. It's extremely important with new pistons and new rods and new everything, because otherwise, if it's out of balance, you can have hundreds of grams of weight in difference moving around inside that engine, and it will just shake the whole thing apart. You could crack the block, you could break things, it could be really bad. So I knew I wanted to get the engine balanced, and they quoted me $300 to get that done. Now, unfortunately, in addition to getting the rotating assembly balanced, because we were putting new pistons on, they called me up and they said, hey, your rods are out of balance as well. There's 3 rods here that are way different weights than the other stock rods. And I said, why would that happen? Is that a defect from the factory? Why would they do that? And he said, likely somebody in the past worked on this engine and they replaced some of the rods with new rods, which now is telling me that probably one of the rods had issues back in the past, which is not a great thing, but they said, we'll replace them. It's gonna be a little bit extra. We'll find some new ones for you that are the exact same weight, and it won't cause any problems and you'll be much better balanced. And I said, okay, fine, do it. So thankfully, they actually had a couple of rods in their shop. They only charged me $30 for 3 new rods, which is a steal. So very happy that they were able to get that done for me. So then they call me a couple hours later and they said, hey, the threads that connect the harmonic balancer to the crankshaft were stripped out. And I had no idea that that was a problem. They seemed to be fitting pretty snugly for me. I was able to get them torqued to the full amount that they needed to be. But he said, hey, they're so stripped that we can't even attach the crank to our balancing machine. So we're gonna have to drill those threads out and retap them with a different bolt size. And I said, all right, fine. If that's what you gotta do, you gotta do it. So drilling and tapping the crank balancing bolt was another $30. Now, that's not a horrible price for hourly rate at a machine shop. I'll take it. But then he calls me back again about an hour later and he says, hey, I got another problem for you. The bolts on the connecting rods for the pistons, the bolts and the nuts are stripped out as well. And I was like, how is this happening? Why are they stripping out? Why are they having issues? And he said, I don't know, probably somebody did work on the engine before. We don't know, but we've got to replace all of them. And I was like, all right, fine, let's do it. Replace the connecting rod bolts. Cool, another thing down. But it wasn't just enough that the bolts were stripped. Unfortunately, and this is probably the biggest issue, the rod end caps were out of round. They were actually egg-shaped. And in order to get egg-shaped, that usually means there's some sort of heat issue with the engine, it's not cooling properly, and the end caps actually start to stretch out into an egg shape instead of a perfect circle. So they explained to me what they were gonna do. They were actually going to machine flat the surfaces again, cut a little material off of them, and then rebore the holes back to the stock size to make sure that the new bearings that we got were gonna work fine and we wouldn't have to upsize. So reboring the piston rods and replacing the bolts was another $100. So then, of course, in order to balance the crankshaft, they had to put the new pistons on the rods. So removal and replacement of the pistons, that was another $64. Then they did a full polish on the crankshaft to make sure we had no problems down the line, and that was another $40. Not too bad to get a crankshaft polished, honestly. 40 bucks, I'll take it. That one feels pretty good. And then the last few items here on the invoice are just a couple of parts. They've got a grade 8 bolt for the new harmonic balancer. That was $2.15, not bad. New valve seals, that was $24 in total. Labor tax was $49. Kentucky sales tax was $3.97. All coming out to a grand total of $943.56. So we got a ton of work done. They did everything. They checked everything. They checked the clearances. They checked the sizes. They mic'd every possible piece of this engine, and we are now ready to start the final rebuild. For example, here we've got the new pistons. These are much more properly assembled. They are smoothly rotating, no issues here. I am really, really happy with them. You can see how shiny and machined the insides of these are. They did a fantastic job. And on top of that, they also actually re-engraved in the numbers on the pistons, so I know which one is which and where they're going. And they put those numbers on the pistons for me for free because I kept complaining that I was losing track of where the caps and the rods would go and which one matched with which one. So we'll never lose them again. They're engraved into the metal. We're all good. Then of course, we've got our crankshaft, nicely polished, properly sized up, and of course, balanced to our new pistons. They also rebalanced our flywheel by drilling out a couple grams of material along here. Nowhere near the bolts, so those will still be fine, but really cool of them to actually balance this properly for me. Why was the flywheel out of balance? Who knows? I didn't take anything off of it, so beats the hell out of me. And now, the coolest piece of the whole project. These are the newly assembled heads with our Manley valves and our Howard's cam springs. These are gonna be absolutely incredible to get put together. I'm excited to see these run with our new valve train geometry, how much lift and movement and everything we got on these. It's gonna be super cool. Now, as excited as I am to see this thing run for the first time, finally, I still have one more very crucial part to make sure that I order, and that is the push rods. So we have everything needed to check the proper push rod height, measure everything out, and then we'll place our order to make sure that we get all of our valve train geometry perfect. Because right now we've got the new springs and the new valves, and we want to make sure everything is working perfectly in tandem with the new pistons and the heads and the camshaft and all of it. It's all got to work perfectly together if we want this thing to run the best that it possibly can. So here's what's going to happen. By the time that you guys see this video, I'll be already hard at work rebuilding this engine. As that process moves along, we're filming the whole thing and we're gonna put it into one big video that will come out very soon. That video is gonna cover basically everything leading up until this point, the full story of building the engine, and finally ending it with getting to see it run for the very first time. So that being said, the big question of the whole video is, do you think it was worth spending $950 to get all this work done at the machine shop? Personally, I think it is. The peace of mind is priceless. This engine is gonna be almost bulletproof by the time that it's done. I've already put so much money into the engine, I might as well make it perfect. And for the first time building an engine, it's gonna be a heck of a story, and it's given me a ton of experience figuring out what to and what not to do when working on projects in the future. And honestly, I think working on the engine so far has been probably my favorite part of this build. Metalwork and repairing rust on the car is fine and dandy, but it makes me feel like my lifespan is shortening by a year every single time I replace a panel. So I don't like it. I'm not a huge fan of bodywork and rust repair. Building engines, that's cool though. That's really fun. It sparks definitely a very unique interest in that I never thought that I'd have. So I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited, and I will see you guys in the next video as we finally rebuild the Chevy 350 engine project that we've been working on for almost 3 months now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya!